All right, I was waiting for Allie to get back in because I want to give her an opportunity to. Is she out there? Okay, well. Okay, for the third time, hello. Good evening, and welcome to our Community Connections, our second Community Connections session this quarter. I am Jermall Wright, the proud superintendent of Little Rock School District, and I am grateful for each of you coming out this evening. I'm going to try not to hold you very long, stalling, waiting for Allie to come in because I know she wanted to say a few things, but I'll keep going and I will pause once she enters to give her an opportunity to greet you all, since this is the area that she represents. And so before I officially get started, I do see a couple of our staff members in the room, so I do want to take a minute to acknowledge them back in the back. We have Mr. Robert Robinson, who is our Executive Director of Human Resources, and behind him, Mr. Darian Smith, who is our Executive Director of Elementary Education, supervises and leads all of our elementary schools in the district. Back in the back, we have Melissa Goody, my long-term, well, kind of long-term, professional colleague who has joined me here in Little Rock. She is our Chief Academic Officer. And next to her is Mr. Jesse Lee, who serves as the Executive Assistant to the Board, and myself. I think that is everyone. I was talking slow, hoping that Allie will walk in, but I will just get started. All right. So, again, I am the proud superintendent of Little Rock School District. I forgot what day this is for me. I used to keep up with the days, and I think I lost track last week. I think I was on like day 74, but at this point, I don't even know. I'm just here. So I'm glad to be here. It has been an interesting, fun, and exciting, never a dull moment ride since I arrived here in Little Rock. We have a great school system with quite a few strengths, lots of great schools, great staff, great programs, and we also have longstanding issues that we know we need to address as a school district to make sure that we're serving all of our kids across our city the best way possible. And so I just want to reiterate to everyone here, we started this year with the theme, Reimagining LRSD, and that means that there are some aspects of our system that we need to think drastically different about. How can we do things different to make sure, again, that we are serving all of our families and our students to the best of our ability? We know that we need to act with a sense of urgency, but we also know that when you think about systems change, it is an art and a science to it, and you have to make sure that you move strategically. We have quite a few cultural issues in our district and in our city that we have to address in order for our district to be as strong as it can possibly be, and those things don't happen overnight. And so we have to be smart about how we go about reimagining our school district. So today, I want to talk about our board goals, or the goals that we have to reimagine our school district. And then we will talk about some of the priorities that we have already identified in terms of the how we're going to achieve our goals. And then we have several cross-functional teams working across our district right now, working on actual implementation steps or actions for all of these priorities. And that is the when. How are we going to sequence what we do? How are we going to develop those priorities? What are we going to do first? What's most important? And you guys, our community, is going to help us in that process by giving us your feedback with regards to two of the goals that I'll talk about in just a minute. But before I jump into our goals, I see we have our board representative here, Ms. Nolan. This is her community, and I believe this is her church. And so I'm going to let her share a few words, and I will be back with you. I am probably sure that you don't want to hear me talk a lot, so I am going to try to get through these goals and priorities as fast as I can, probably in about 20 minutes, and reserve the rest of the time for feedback. Again, we have questions for you pertaining to a couple of the goals, but I know that there may be some questions or comments or concerns that are specific to this particular community that you may want to ask about that may not be reflected in any of our goals. So I want to make sure that I leave time for that. All right, so we have, it's going to say 6 goals, but we have 4 goals and 2 constraints. And I always struggle with explaining what is the difference between goals and constraints. So since the person who authored this, or a portion of this is here, Ms. Goody, I'm going to put you on the spot. Can you explain real quickly what is the difference between a goal and a constraint? She needs the mic. I'll bring it to you.
Right. I guess the way to think about constraints are the enabling conditions to meet the goals, right? So I think if you look at welcoming and supportive schools, we all know the value and the importance of having a school where kids feel safe, families feel welcome. In addition, parent and family partnerships, we can't do school without parent and family partnerships. So I think looking at constraints as like those enabling conditions to like ensure that goal 1, right, that our kiddos are truly college and career ready, means that those constraints have to be in place.
All right, thank you, ma'am. All right, so goal 1, which is our biggest goal and the most meatiest of our the 4 goals and 2 constraints, is around college and career readiness, and it is focused on improving student achievement in literacy and math. There are 4 parts to this goal, and I forgot to say before I got started. If you want a copy of this presentation, I want to reference it later. It is posted on our website. It's right on the homepage. You'll see the Community Connections banner, and then there's a link that you can click, and the presentation is there. But there are 4 parts to goal 1, and again, this goal is focused on increasing student achievement, helping our students meet and exceed grade level expectations. There are 4 parts. 1 focuses on performance in grades K to 2nd, and it is my belief, and this has been a focus of mine everywhere that I've been, that in order for us to really permanently and systematically correct the longstanding issues that we have with student achievement, we need to make sure that we focus a lot of our time, effort, and energy on kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade to make sure that we are getting it right there as much as possible so that we won't have a lot of kids in 3rd grade and above who are still reading below grade level and still struggling. The other part of this goal focuses on grades 3rd grade through high school. We have a portion of this goal that really focuses on closing gaps. And so what we want to do as a district is be extremely transparent in terms of where the gaps are existing in our district with regards to marginalized groups of students. You see the different subgroups there. So as you begin to see us report out on progress, you will see us be intentional about making sure that we're transparent with what gaps look like in our district and having an intense focus on making sure that those gaps close over time. And then another portion of this goal that is also extremely important to me is we often, especially in urban school districts where we oftentimes have a high percentage of kids who are struggling or are behind academically, that you don't see a lot of effort and attention and focus on those students who are on grade level. And so we want to make sure that we are intentional with goal 1 with having a specific goal that focuses on increasing and enhancing advanced academics opportunities for all students across our district, and not just for those who may be identified as gifted or talented, but we want to make sure that we are providing and exposing a large group of students to higher level and more rigorous academic opportunities within our school system. All right, so again, that was a huge goal. That's 4 different parts to that one goal. And these are the priorities that we have identified for goal 1. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time reading this because it's a lot. And these priorities will probably be a focus of ours for several years to come. These are not priorities or goals that we're going to achieve next year or even within the next 3 or 4 years. We're going to be working on this for quite a while. Not going to read all of those, but all of them are important. But I do want to call out number 3, which is around improving Tier 1 instruction, which is a huge focus of ours for this year. And for those who may not fully understand what that means is the very first instruction that kids get from their teachers in whatever content area it is, we want to make sure that it is on grade level. We want to make sure that it is high quality, and we want to make sure that all kids have access to grade level instruction regardless of how far behind they are. Real quick, and I promise I won't stay on this long, we tend to, in our education system, we tend to focus a whole lot on remediation and intervention. We pull kids out a lot of times for extra help, but in the process of pulling kids out and providing interventions, we take them away from experience and exposure to what they should be learning and what they should be achieving on grade level. And all that does is, over time, just makes the gaps bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And so we have an intentional focus in LRSD right now in making sure that we have a focus on Tier 1 instruction, we make sure that all kids have access to grade level instruction, and we find other times to pull out and provide intervention for those students who may be behind. Again, this is a big goal, lots of priorities, there are 7 of them. Number 4, kind of already talked about that. It's a lot here. Again, I'm not gonna go over every single priority. The PowerPoint is available on our district website for you to review if you want to review it deeply. I want to make sure that I provide enough time for feedback and questions. So goal 2 is around career pathways. And goal 2 states that, Lord, I'll read it here. Through the implementation of academies and career pathways, we want to increase by 5% each year for the next 5 years the number of students enrolled in a CTE career pathway and the number of students earning an industry certification. Increase by 5% each year for the next 5 years the number of students using career planning tools to explore careers, interests, and aptitudes. This goal and the content of this goal has been a, trying to think of the right word, it's been a lot of attention made to this particular area in the last few days. And so at our board meeting next Thursday, we will spend some time on revisiting this goal, making sure that this goal that we have identified is the goal that we want to continue pursuing in our district. There is a lot of misconceptions about career pathways and CTE. And so I just want to quickly say that, when we hear terms like CTE and career and technical education, we, at least I do, automatically go back and think about trades, whether it's welding or auto mechanic or things of that nature. And that is a part of CTE, but there is also an entirely different component of CTE that goes into some of the high-tech, extremely technical content areas. There's all different types of CTE courses that align to some of the main content areas that we teach in school, and it doesn't necessarily mean, or CTE courses aren't just for kids who aren't going to college. There are, we have academies of like biomedical science at Southwest High School where we have kids taking all types of high-tech science and medical courses, and these are for kids who may have an interest in pursuing medically related degrees later on after high school. And so the field of CTE is far-reaching and it is wide, but again, there are a lot of misconceptions about CTE courses and what it means for students. These are some priorities for Goal 2. Identify and communicate a clear implementation plan, monitoring plan, and path forward for Forward NGL district-wide. The Forward NGL partnership with our district, I believe, started, and correct me if I'm wrong, people who are in the room, I think it began in 2019. Is anybody gonna help me? Okay, sometime around 2019, and so we are in maybe our 3rd or 4th year of implementation, and so this is not anything new. Again, it was started in 2019, and we'll be having more conversations and discussions about this particular goal on next Thursday. All right, goal number 3 is around student recruitment and retention. Increase year over year the K-12 enrollment such that by 2030, our enrollment will be equal or greater than 24,000 with a caveat there, or a number that we will determine later after we go through a demographic study. And so we just actually secured, signed, well, I haven't signed it yet, I know it's on my desk, but we just are getting ready to secure a partnership with a demographer company who is actually going to look at a number of things. Birth rates within the city, population trends within the city. Where have our students gone? Looking at trends in terms of private school enrollment, charter school enrollment, and I know I'm missing a few things. We know we have to revisit boundaries. We're getting ready to break ground on a new high school out west. And so we know that we're going to have to revisit boundaries for schools across our district. We're losing a lot of student population in the central area of the city. We are over capacity and growing out in Southwest as well as West. And so we know that we have to take a different look at how our boundaries are currently existing. And so all of that will, this demographic study will give us some of the information that we need to kind of make some of those decisions moving forward. So that 24,000 student goal may change once we get information back from that study. Here's some of the key priorities around Goal 3, ensuring a safe, orderly, welcoming, and supportive environment for all students. And I know safety is top of mind for many people in our community now in light of the recent incidences that we have been seeing in our school district. You know, I tell people all the time, our school district is simply a reflection of our city and our society, and we know that across our country we are seeing, unfortunately, easy access to firearms. And when there's easy access to firearms and other societal ills within our community, unfortunately, they show up in schools. So we will be tackling that issue again as well on Thursday at our school board meeting as we look to implement some additional ways to ensure that our students and our staff and our families feel safe when they send our kids to school. Another priority that I'll mention briefly around student recruitment and retention is around our overly cumbersome enrollment process. When I first arrived, I would hear people talk about just the frustration that they would feel with trying to enroll and register kids in school. And so I went over to the student registration office one day and said, treat me as if I'm a new parent coming to LRSD and, you know, show me what I need to do. And this is no exaggeration, you all. I think I've told this story a number of times. 45 minutes in, I think I was on like screen 6. I said, forget it. I am done with this. And so it became apparent to me very, very quickly that we needed to do something different. And so our folks have been researching various options. Several months ago, we identified a new system that we will actually be implementing for this open enrollment season, which starts, if not today, tomorrow, soon? Sometime soon. We will have a new process that we'll be rolling out, and so be on the lookout for information about that. So it should be much, much easier, although I know we're still going to have some implementation kinks during our first year, but I think it was important enough for us to do something different because I was frustrated. And I was only registering one kid, and I can't imagine what it would be like if you had multiple children because the information didn't sync over. You almost like had to start all over again. All right, goal 4, and I promise you I'm almost done talking, is around staff recruitment and retention. And so we want to, of course, increase recruitment and retention rates of highly qualified teachers. We want to rank among the top 5 school districts in Arkansas, blah, 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 blah. So we are actually already there. We have implemented 2 salary adjustments for our teachers. We have one more round to go to get our beginning salaries up to, I believe, 48 is the goal, and not just for brand new teachers, but we have actually increased compensation salaries for teachers at every step of every step within the system. I almost want to take my mic off when I say this. I actually have a goal of trying to get to 50 because several other school districts have already gotten to 50, but I don't want to say that out loud because people will say, you said 50. Anyway, all right. So these are some key priorities around staff recruitment and retention. I'm not going to read all these. Continue our process of increasing teacher salaries, and very excited that we're not just focusing on teachers. Last week or a couple of weeks ago at our last board meeting, several of our board members had some concerns about our classified staff, especially some of the groups of classified staff that are traditionally the lowest paid, our custodians, bus drivers, food service workers, and our teacher assistants. And so we work to make sure that we have a minimum starting pay rate for all employees across our district at about 15, it's actually like $15.02 or 3 cents. So we're proud about that. And so we know that our system can't be successful without the support and contributions of all of our staff. And so we want to make sure that all of our staff feel appreciated in terms of compensation, not just our teachers. All right, constraint number 1 is around welcoming and supportive schools. We're going to integrate social and emotional learning framework and practices district-wide. This is it was a big topic prior to the pandemic. Now that we are coming out, I think we're coming out of the pandemic, it is a much even bigger topic. And so we are piloting a couple of approaches right now. And one of the things that we really want to make sure is that we don't want to put more on the shoulders of our teachers to have to do. And so we're looking for ways in which we can address the social and emotional learning needs of some of our students without having to put additional work on our teachers. And so we're piloting at the elementary and middle school level an approach called Rhythm. And we should be ending or getting to the trial or the pilot of that pretty soon. When I met with my teacher advisory group a couple of weeks ago, several of them are piloting this in their classrooms, and they had lots of positive things to say about their experience piloting it thus far. And so if it's something that our teachers think will be beneficial and actually works, then we will expand it out to other schools. At the very beginning stages of implementing another pilot across our high schools that we're very excited about. Don't want to talk a lot about it now. We've had conversations with all of our high schools thus far. We've had a visit from the creators of this program that's called HIP, but it will provide a way for us to reach every single high school student across all of our high schools, but using a peer approach. We oftentimes think about peer pressure in a negative way. But peer pressure can also be used in a positive way. And those of you with kids, especially in the adolescent teenage ages, as I know all too well, my kids listen to their friends a whole lot more than they listen to their adult parents. And so we believe that this peer approach that has been used in several large districts across Florida, some other states that I can't remember right now, we know that it can have a positive impact on our students in Little Rock. And without getting into a lot of information, our kids, many of our kids are dealing with a lot of mental health related issues, more so than the average person would believe. And it's not just kids from low income households. It is kids across the spectrum, especially in our middle and high schools. And so we believe that this HIP program will be something that we can use to kind of address some of those needs. All of these priorities represent all the stuff I just got through talking about, so I'm going to skip over it. And then our last constraint before we get to the comment period is around parent and family partnerships. And this constraint reads, every school will create and implement a culturally responsive family engagement plan, welcoming and encouraging authentic partnerships in support of a child's educational experiences. These represent some priorities for that goal. And basically, we want to figure out a much better way to engage families across our city of every demographic group and make sure that we are providing ways for you to continually give us feedback and input on how we're doing as a district and additional ideas that we can consider to make sure that we're doing the very best we can to engage our families and our communities. And we're going to start with that just a few minutes. All right, so with regards to, I may do this a little differently. Well, no. So when you came in, you should have either should have received a handout, or if you didn't receive a handout with these questions, you can simply use the QR code to respond. So I would like you to record your responses to these two questions, but I also want to engage in a conversation about these two questions here as well. So if you didn't get a handout, make sure you get one before you leave. Make sure that you turn it in so that we can collect that data and use that data, or you can use the QR code to send your responses. So, first question, and this is related to goal 3. Why do families leave LRSD, and what would attract families to an LRSD school? The second question is around constraint 2. How can we better engage and partner with parents and families in non-traditional ways? And how can we more effectively engage parents and families to prioritize student attendance and support academic interventions? Let's start first with the question with goal 3. Why do families leave us? And what do we need to do as a district to attract families and students and keep them in our district? Yes, ma'am. I think who has the microphone?
I have 5 sons. We've been here almost 3 years. 4 of them go to LRSD schools. I have a freshman at Central, and my younger 3 go to Don Roberts. We pulled our second son, so I can tell you why we left. We pulled our second son. I'm currently homeschooling him. Because when he was tested, when we arrived, he's dyslexic, and then when we had him privately tested in April, he lost ground. Not only did he lost ground, there was no sense of urgency towards him being closer to grade level, and I don't think my 7th grader reading at a 3rd grade level is acceptable, and I'm not going to wait around for processes to happen when he's already 13. I have a short window of time. So that's why we left. If there was effective dyslexia remediation, and I felt like there was responsive, adequate teacher support, the IEP coordinator had 17 kids she was in charge of, and I spoke to his current IEP coordinator for this year at the beginning of the year, said, hey, we're homeschooling him. You'll still see him in the system because he's doing band, but he's not there, just because she contacted me. And then I got an email Wednesday saying they were updating his IEP goals, and they would be, contacting me to make a meeting. And that just shows me that my son was a number, that there's no one there who we're going to take an active interest in his education. So that's why we left. And that's why we come back. My older son's at Central, and it's a great fit, and we're happy to have him there, even with all of the safety issues. And I think Don Roberts is a great school, but that's why it seems like LRSD works really well for high-achieving students and does not work nearly well enough for students willing to work hard at grade-level courses.
Please make sure that you record what you just said, so that we'll be able to keep that. And I'm going to try not to respond to every comment, but so much of what you said resonated with me and resonated with when I got here. I spent about a month just talking to whomever I can find to talk to, whether it was community members, staff members, teachers, whoever. And in my first round I do these community meetings once a quarter. And so the community sessions that I did in August, I shared some of the findings that I compiled from all of the folks that I had conversations with. And a consistent thing that I heard over and over again is that LRSD does well for kids who are your average on grade level kids. For kids who are having struggles or difficulties, we do not do as well. I can also tell you, we've got to do a much better job with how our responsiveness to parents. So we have created an unofficial, well, it's kind of official. We need to do more to kind of build it out for next school year. But I have an office of the ombudsman, and this is a person within our district who, when things get to my level, I make sure that we forward that information to the individual in our district, and he has done a phenomenal job with being responsive to parents, making sure that we reach out to them ASAP, being that liaison between the parent and the schools to help solve some of the issues. I've got to figure out how to sustain that, because it's not his only job, but it's almost taken over his main responsibilities. But that is one of the things that I know that we will look to expand next year, because when we talk about keeping and attracting families, we can't be a school district who is non-responsive or slow to respond or don't have solutions when people reach out to us with problems. We've got to be responsive, quick, and have systems set up to where our families have the confidence that if they have a struggle or problem, that we're going to do everything within our means to solve that issue. Who's next? Thank you for your comments. Yes, ma'am.
I'm not speaking personally. My kids are 38 and 34. They are both graduates of Central and had good experiences in school. I think a lot of people leave the school district because of the perception of middle schools, and they'll pull them out in elementary school so they can have a spot there at the private school or wherever come middle school time. I think there needs to be more attention given to improving situations in middle school, and then a whole lot of marketing about some of the successful endeavors at middle school to help turn that perception around. I think once
yeah.
people pull out of the district, they don't come back. It's a rare thing.
When you look at our enrollment trends, you actually, what you just stated is actually well supported by our data. Even from last year to this year, we lost about 600 students. 400 of those students was at the middle school level. I'm sorry, at the elementary school level. High school, we haven't really seen that big of a decline. And surprisingly, and I don't think it holds true this year, but when I first arrived, when I looked at the data prior to the end of last school year, our middle school population has actually grown over the last 10 years. But we do lose a lot at the elementary level, and I do suspect that it's because families are looking for options in middle school. I saw a hand, or
We actually, we actually did leave in middle school because of the middle school situation, but we're back for high school. So I just was going to share that experience. We did come back, had a great elementary experience at Pulaski Heights. I felt like the middle school situation was, I felt like there was a disconnect, and I felt like it was chaos, and it was nothing like the experience that we had in elementary, nor does it compare to the wonderful experience at Central. And really, Central, the academics at Central, we found were superior to the private school that we went to for 3 years. So I wanted to address that.
thank you. All right. Any more, and feel free, you can comment on any question, but I'm going to move on. I'm going to combine the last two questions, better ways for us to engage with parents and families in non-traditional ways, and really want to talk about, we've got a serious attendance issue in our district, like a chronic issue in our district. So we haven't released our school grades yet. We were waiting on the state went back and did some reconfigurations and some other things. And so as soon as we know that we can release that data publicly, we will. But a lot of our schools were really negatively impacted by chronic absenteeism. So even if kids did well or showed tremendous growth on that one state assessment that counts so much, some of that progress was negatively impacted just by the sheer number of kids that we have who are chronically absent. And help me, I know I keep putting you on the spot. I'm not going to call your name, but help me to remember. Oh, Mr. Smith, you should know. How many days can a student miss before they're termed chronically absent? Isn't it 10?
9.
9. So a chronically absent student is a student who misses more than 9 days of school within a school year. And we have sometimes 9 absences in a month. Well, that may be exaggerating. So I think it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter, from what I understand, how the state codes absences.
That's correct. So we have resolved and unresolved absences as a district. If your child is out sick and you call in, that is considered an excused resolved absence. However, when it comes to state reporting and our accountability, an absence is an absence, no matter what the absence is for. If it was for a family trip,
I know you're going to mention that.
I had to bring it up.
A couple of staff members in our cabinet meeting earlier this week brought up the subject of we have some kids and families who travel back to Mexico or some other countries at any given point during the school year. And then I have been guilty of this as well, especially because when my kids were in grade school, I wasn't living in the same city with them, so I would routinely fly them to wherever for a trip in the middle of the school year, and so I am just as guilty of it as well. But even looking at our data, we know that even has an impact on some of our schools, and so we can't tell parents what to do in terms of when they take vacations and when they take their children out of school, but we just want our parents to understand that does have an impact on how schools are perceived by that letter grade that they get at the end of the school year. You can't talk without the mic.
Sorry,
microphone.
Just curious if that's across all grade levels or if you're seeing it more in high school.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm thinking more elementary. Yeah.
And 9 days a year, I guess, seems like not that many when little kids, like my little kids were always sick all the time. Like in your experience, is 9 really about the right level to start worrying?
That's standard from state to state. Every state that I worked in,
Really?
that's pretty much the same. It fluctuates between 9 and 10.
Gotcha. Okay, thanks.
And, I don't know how.
I'll tell you that one thing we've seen a lot for years is it's very difficult to convey to parents of kindergartners and first graders that it's important to have their kid there on time every day. It's hard to express that real learning is happening, and it's important to have your kid there. And so that's a conversation that's been going on for years.
I don't know. I'll come to you in just a second, Mrs. Smith. I think back to my parents, my mom and dad. Like, I don't know if it was abusive, but they would send us to school and would tell us, I don't care if you're sick, you're gone when you get there. Don't have those people calling us because we're not coming to get you. And so I had perfect attendance, I think, from like kindergarten to maybe 9th or 10th grade. And I think the only reason I ever missed a day is when I got the chicken pox in high school. But yeah, so we need more. Well, I won't say that, no.
So I just want to add to the point about the 9 days. Unfortunately, on the 9th absence, we have to submit a truancy report. And so the parent gets a letter, and then it's referred to the courts. So.
But they're so backed up, they probably won't get to your letter anyway. So.
Well, as somebody who does the truancy letters at
Oh,
her school,
never mind.
no. I do the letters. I don't do the courts. I'm curious and that's a conversation I'm having with our SRO on campus, is how effective the truancy courts are. Also, based on just the few comments in here, I think one of the things we can do is educate our parents.
Yes.
I don't think they realize that they're hurting their schools as much as they are. Because I look at the families that are in here, a lot of them are Pulaski Heights, I think. And I know that they don't want to do that. And so I think educating them on that 9 and the significance of it would be important, and finding out about the truancy courts.
Duly noted.
Yeah, I was just going to say, going back to ways to engage parents and families, I'm a real big fan of the Community Schools Initiative with the partnership with LRSD in the city. And I think, that was hard getting off the ground because of COVID, but I'm hoping that's going to help because those schools are really trying to go into their communities, and it takes a little while to build communities. But if that's a partnership that's continued to be supportive by both the school district and the city, I think that may help a lot. I would be curious to get your take on the Community Schools Initiative because it's still pretty new.
Yep.
To our
It is still fairly new, but I can tell you the impact that it is having on families in the schools that are currently community schools. You just would not believe the number of families that are being served. We can't keep food in our school food pantries. We had a food drive the other day where we had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pallets. Well, not hundreds of pallets, but 1,000 plus boxes. And so, when we talk about whole child education, it's whole child education and whole family education. When I talk to our school community schools coordinators that are working each of our 6 community schools, just the stories that you hear about the sheer number of kids that come to school hungry, that we have to make sure are fed before we start the day teaching. And so another thing that a lot of people just don't realize about the service that we provide our families, it's a whole lot more than just academics. And a lot of our families depend upon us for basic things, especially in this economy, that they may not be able to get elsewhere, even with help and support with utility bills. That's been the biggest thing over the last couple of months. And so we do a lot to support our families and students across our district and our community schools. I tell people in other places that I worked, I have never, ever seen the level of engagement and partnership with a public school district from so many different entities within our city, not just the city of Little Rock, but just a sheer number of partnerships that we have from companies, corporations, the back to school rallies that I had a chance to visit at schools just to see the outpouring of book bags, school supplies, and I mean hundreds and hundreds and hundreds at many different schools. You don't find this in other cities and other places. And so this community does a great job of making sure that our schools are well supported and our community schools are doing great. The city has, I think now we're up to 3 or 4 social workers that are actually, we may be getting close to 6, one for every one of our community schools, to be a liaison between our families and the schools to help with a lot of things that our families need that are distractions from their kids being able to focus and learn in school. And so that's actually going well. What else? And if you've got questions or comments outside of these goals or constraints, feel free to share those as well.
This one's real marginal, but my son was always the kid who had perfect attendance pre-COVID, and now I feel like I struggle a lot more with when I need to keep somebody home to avoid exposing the school to illnesses. I think there's been good messaging on that, but I always need more about it's okay, your kid has a runny nose, yes, send them, no, keep them home, and what's expected of me.
Yeah, it's funny because 1 minute we're saying send the kids to school, and then the next minute we're saying don't send them if they have a runny nose or have fever, because we're still hypersensitive about the spread of illnesses throughout the school system. Especially, I have not, and I don't even want to jinx myself, so I'm probably not going to say anything. But we haven't seen the level of respiratory illnesses that I know is impacting several kids and youth across our country and in other places, and I'm praying that it doesn't happen here. We still have 12 minutes.
This is not related to any of your issues, but it's very important to me and to a lot of people. Our community is hosting a number of Afghan refugee families, and I am one of the education sponsors for a family, and I had to register 5 kids in that online system last year.
God bless you.
It took a long time, and a lot of the questions weren't even relevant, so I had to call up the attendance office and say, there's a question that says, what was the last date of attendance of school in the U.S.? And it was never, that was not an option. Anyway, of these 37 kids that we have, and I checked that number today with Dr. Henry, 37 enrolled in our schools and a whole bunch to come. Because lots of little kids, we have 3 below 5 in our family that we're sponsoring. And a lot of these kids are coming from situations where education was not important or necessary in their community. A lot of the parents in these families do not read or write at all in their own language, much less in English. And so these kids are at a huge deficit walking into a classroom last year when they didn't know a word of English, and not all of the schools have the ESL support, which they drastically, all of these kids should be getting ESL services several times a week. And I know the issue of retaining non-English speaking students is a big issue, but a lot of these kids have inaccurate birthdays. And so having these kids moved on when a child who is in the, say, 5th grade, who doesn't know how to subtract yet, because they didn't have school where he came from, putting them on and on and on, they need a whole lot of remedial attention that's not just, and getting them enrolled in some kind of special services. They're not necessarily going to qualify for special ed, but yet when they're not getting what they, appropriate level teaching for math and for reading, it's all just going over their heads. And I'm really worried. And I'd like to hear your thoughts about these. And I've realized that it's not just Afghan kids in our schools. There are a lot of non-English speaking kids in the district. I just have become acutely aware, being a sponsor of one of these families.
So I need to confirm, and I'm going to answer your question, but I suspect, I know one of the statements I'm about to make is true, and I suspect the second statement is too. I know that the fastest population, the fastest growing population of kids in our district are our Hispanic students, some of which are non-English speakers, some of them which are. And I would assume the second fastest group is just non-English speakers altogether that are coming from various countries. And so Dr. Henry and I, just as recently as 2 weeks ago, just met about this very same issue. And so years ago, the district used to have a newcomer center that supported families and students in the situations that you just described. And so we are actually in the very beginning stages of, actually she sent me a draft plan today. We're actually looking at recreating that again, because it is a dire need within our district, because we have so many students who fit the description of what you just described. And so we are looking to create and establish a newcomer center to be able to help and support those kids.
Thinking on the attendance issue for a lot of these kids, they're coming from home situations where school was not important or necessary. We know that it is, and the parents don't understand the importance. I would love to see this newcomer center or whatever, a way to engage families of these non-native speaking students so that they become aware of the importance of schooling and the necessity for being in school in order to learn English and to hopefully get some technical skills if they're not college bound. Thank you.
And even for some of our, depending upon the age and the educational experience or situation of a newcomer who may come to our city or to our school district, we also have an array of services that I didn't even know existed until I visited our adult education center and building yesterday. And we were going through one of our compliance audits for the state. And so we have a host of programs for kids that are 16 years or older that may also fit some of the students who may arrive from other countries in our district. So we do have some supports, and I think the Newcomer Center, once we recreate it, will be a game changer for how we serve those students and how we serve those families. And we have great examples of what great newcomer centers look like all throughout the country. Yes, ma'am. Behind you. Oh.
Good evening, Dr. Wright.
Good evening.
Everyone. Excuse me, I'm Tanya Sproles. I'm actually a school counselor in the Little Rock School District at Washington Elementary School, Booker T. Washington, which happens to be one of our community schools that you just spoke of a few moments ago, and it is certainly an awesome environment. So I invite you all to come by at your leisure. But we do have monthly community cafe events, and so those are open to the community. So you can come out and see just how awesome those schools are, at least ours. And I'll speak highly of Booker T. Washington. Thank you. But in response to the lady who just made a comment about the ESL, I also happen to be our ESL coordinator at our school. We don't have a high population. We have a very low number, but I still get a chance to experience what it's like to process those students who are in that program or who are being screened for that program. And I can tell you that there are some resources available even at schools that are non-newcomer schools. For example, we have the access to Rosetta Stone, and so those students who qualify by scoring a 1 or a 2 on the screener or their overall score, they have access to the Rosetta Stone program. So that's one resource that we have. And then Dr. Henry. Okay. Well, there is, but that resource is available, and of course, it's at no charge. And so another resource that they have access to are instructional modifications, so that classroom teachers are able to give them modified assignments and whatnot. And we also, our district offers training for teachers to go through a 4-course. It's 4 classes that they'll attend, and they're trained on how to work with students who are non-English speakers or have limited English speaking skills. So the district does offer that for teachers. And in addition, they can have testing accommodations, so that when they take their standardized testing, then they can have, they're offered, or they're able to, through their LPAC committee, have testing accommodations. And in addition, they have a summer camp called Camp Can Do. You've heard of that? Yes, and it's really great. So we are trying to offer resources for students who are non-English or have limited English speaking skills. And in addition to that, Dr. Henry has just hired, I want to say 4 to 6, I forgot exactly what their title is, but they'll be going to some of the schools that have higher populations. We don't receive one at our school because, like I said, my numbers are low. But schools who have a higher population of ESOL identified students have one of these resource individuals that come to their school and actually work with the students directly. They work with the teachers and the students. So we are trying to expand our services to that ESL population.
Every week rather than just some of the schools in the district. And I understand it's a staffing issue,
Yep.
but our kids, Williams Magnet has done an amazing job helping us with our kids. They're doing great, but they don't get an ESL person. They get other services, but I think every ESL kid needs ESL instruction.
And we,
In a perfect world. But
yeah. So, and we don't want to, we don't want to segregate a certain population of kids to one place. However, when you have limited supports and services, in some cases, it's much better to have students with similar needs, such as our newcomers, in one place, so that we don't have to, stretch the few ESL support teachers and other support staff that we have across the district, serving all 38 of our schools, when we could have a large population of those students housed in one place and concentrate our support.
I know we're wrapping up, and it sounds like it's on your agenda for the board meeting next Thursday, but I'm a parent of a central student, and, the rash of safety issues in the last month. Where do you think will be 3 weeks from now as new measures, or what have you seen worked in other districts that you've been at in urban areas?
So,
sorry, Ellie.
no, you take it.
I want to tell you that I called Dr. Wright. Was that Sunday?
You call every day, Allie, but
I don't call every day. I called on, I think it was Sunday. I'm not sure which day it was, but it wasn't Sunday. It was when the
that was Monday
at Central.
Yeah.
And I was really pleasantly surprised, because his response was, "We are on this. I've assembled a team. We're having a meeting tomorrow. I'm going to have things to bring to you this week." And so I just want to make sure that everybody who's here and everybody who's watching understands that the response I got took those concerns very seriously. I'm not sure if he will be able to speak to changes, because those are going to be things the board will probably have to decide. But you're welcome to pitch your ideas, and then they can always call board members and urge the board to do it.
we and actually I have such a fantastic core team at the district. They they called the meeting as soon as we got the news about I think we're going to share this data publicly for the board meeting anyway. So I think we've had 2 cases of real guns found in campuses, both of which were at Central. And then we've had about 14 other facsimile created guns, most of which were not loaded, but they have been found in a variety of schools. And so I know many of our board members, especially me, although I'm not a board member, I hate for schools to feel like prisons in terms of metal detectors and other screens and things that kids have to go through. That is the last thing that I would hope that we will have to do. However, we also have to make sure that our students, our staff, and our families feel safe, and we have to make sure that we don't have incidences of guns being brought into the classroom. We found that second gun at Central just from a random scan in a random classroom in the middle of the day, and so I can't speak to what ultimately decisions the board will make, but we are bringing a couple of proposals to the board to consider around what I just said that I didn't want to do. Secondly, the problem with Central, it is such a humongous campus, and it is an old building with so many doors, and so we are also our Director of Safety and Security and our SROs and some of our security officers are putting forth a much more aggressive plan to secure those doors during the school day. We're in conversation with the staff also at Central around there's a lot of student movement. Some students don't have courses all day, so they're going in and out. Some leave for lunch, and so we're having discussions about ways in which we can make coming in and leaving the school much more safe and secure than what it is now. But tune into the board meeting on Thursday. We do have a couple of measures that we will be bringing to the board for consideration to improve safety, and not just Central, but actually at every middle and high school across our district. Oh, yes. Yes. So we're actually installing, we have a crisis alert system that will be available in all of our schools. It is teachers and all of our staff, not just teachers, will wear just like your ID badge. But it, you push it one time, it sends a signal to the administrators or to the team that is identified so that we can respond quickly to an issue that's happening within the classroom, outside on the playground. It actually covers a certain perimeter of the actual school building. It can automatically put the school on lockdown. If something is happening on another side of the building and people aren't aware, a staff member can, I think you push it 2 or 3 times, and it automatically sends a message across the loudspeaker for everybody to go on lockdown, so to make sure the doors and things are secure. And so we have that in place. We're installing all of the cameras and the audio equipment that is necessary for the work that's actually being installed across our campuses now. We've also just recently passed a policy last board meeting or the board meeting before, where now it is an actual policy that all teachers have to, all teachers and staff, number one, have to keep their classroom doors locked, and we have to keep all exterior doors locked. And so now when we see staff members who may prop open doors or may take other actions that puts the safety of other staff members and students in jeopardy, and then we have something that we can be a little bit more, sounds so harsh, but since it's policy, we can actually take more serious action when employees don't abide by these particular policies, because it's routine for people. I used to do it as well as a teacher and as a principal to keep from having to walk all the way to the front of the building. I would put a shoe or a book in the door and prop it open just so that we can just so you can get in and out. But those are practices that we have got to stop as a district to make sure that our campuses are safe. So those are some things that we've already done, and again, we'll be bringing some other proposals to the board next Thursday.
When you make decisions on Thursday about how to keep guns out of our schools, how fast will you be able to move on some of these things?
It depends.
Because, I want it done yesterday as a parent. So, are we talking about something that's going to take a long time to implement, or, I mean, how fast are you going to move? I guess is what I'm trying to get.
So it depends on the board's vote, but if we get approval to move forward, the vendors are already just waiting for us to say, yes, we're moving forward. Now, I don't know how long it will take for some of these units to be delivered to all of our schools and for us to begin using them, but we're going to move as quick as we have the authority to do so.
Can you describe this decision-making process behind not using the NWEA for 3rd or 5th graders?
Yes, great question. So, yes, love that question. We decided to forego, first of all, we do a lot of assessments in our district. So many assessments that we don't even use the data for what it's intended for it to be used for, number one. Number two, the NWA assessment is not aligned at all to our curriculum that we're teaching. And so the best use of an assessment is for teachers to be able to make informed decisions about what they need to do to help their kids get better based upon what they're teaching them. NWEA is a norm reference test that is based upon national standards, not necessarily the standards that we teach, and it's definitely not aligned to our pacing. And so it could be testing kids on standards and skills that we haven't even taught. And so that data is not really useful to us. When we were in level 5, we had to do a lot of extra stuff just because of state sanctions and state requirements. But since we are in level 4, we do have a little bit more leeway, although we still have some requirements that we have to abide by. And so we have decided to forego NWEA in 3rd through 5th grade, and we're actually focusing on creating more curriculum-based assessments that will be embedded within our pacing guide, so that those type of assessments teachers can use and make decisions about what kids need quick, and it's aligned to what kids are actually being taught. Yes.
So how's my 5th grader going to have a Lexile score so I know what kind of book he should be reading? And then he did well on his math assessment, but then how do I know, and how does the teacher know where to push him academically? Like, because that's the one nice thing about the NWEA is it just lets you keep going until you, and then for our son with dyslexia, it could tell us when he starts skipping questions. So what would then a teacher use to do a Lexile score, and how far to go in math? Like, what else could they do?
So we still have screeners that all of our kids are required to take at certain times of the school year. And so that gives the teacher and the parents information about their Lexile reading levels and even their math levels. And I know I can't rattle them off, but if I could name the number of assessments that we were giving elementary kids in grades K through 5, you would be surprised. And so we still have enough assessments that give us the information that we need. We were just trying to reduce some of the assessments that aren't. And a lot of the assessments were giving us the same information. And so we just reduce duplication. I love that question. Any others? If there aren't any more questions, again, thank you all for coming out. The Pulaski Heights community, you all get the award for let me preface this, the most folks in attendance in the second quarter's community engagement meetings thus far. We still have one more out in Southwest, but last quarter, Southwest won the award both times. And so you're still in second place overall, but I'm just kidding. Thank you all for coming out. Again, if you haven't completed the questions on the QR code, please do so, or use the paper. We do need that feedback. And again, reach out to me, reach out to any members of our team for any questions, concerns that you have, and we will be sure. Oh, we had one staff member who came in late, and so if you email me and I push it on to someone else, it will probably be our new chief of staff. This is Reginald Ballard, who has been with us for a couple of weeks now, and so I am extremely glad to have him on board, as it will help take some of the workload off of me. Not too much, but just a little. All right. Thank you all for coming out. Have a great evening.
We want to thank Pulaski Heights United
Methodist
Church for hosting us this evening, and for those of you who are members here, Thank you very much for your hospitality. Also, our next meeting will be November 14th at Lifeline Baptist Church, 7601 Baseline, and it will be in the Fellowship Hall. So thank you very much.
If you came in the front and you need help finding the front entrance again, I am happy to walk you back